right there. We're good. We're live.
Good evening, everyone. We are Team B of the Business Valuation Challenge from Westminster College. Here's our member, Matteo Zapata, Dorothy Zhao, Nate Whiffen, Harry Cross, Alex Herman, and Weston. He is not here today, but he contributes a lot to the presentation. We are here. Sorry, I'll give this. We're here today to present our valuation analysis on Pest Friendly Pest Control Company, which is a private company based in Maryland in the U.S.
Perfect. So a little overview on the company. It was founded in 2007 by Gene Wright and is currently operating in Maryland and the states surrounding it. Right now, Gene and his family own 40% and 60% is owned by a private equity firm. And a big part of their company and the growth behind it is these patent-protected products that they use that Dorothy mentioned are planet-friendly. And the organic compounds that build these products are really important in their growth plan. Okay, so here are the lists of their products. And these products may just seem like a quick little fix for a lot of people, but the business model relies on how important these products are for people's livelihoods. Like for example, the crawl space remediation. I'd never even heard of that because out here we have basements, but back there they have crawl spaces. And as Gene mentioned on the phone, a lot of these spaces, they're always wet, right? The whole point is to keep the house dry, but these crawl spaces end up just becoming a habitat for pests, and they can be really, really detrimental to the house. And the termites, they can be really destructive, and so there's times where someone may not know that they need this product or service until someone goes under there and realizes that the product holding their house up is completely crumbling. So there's a lot of demand for these products that people just do not know that they need the help yet.
So I will be touching on some highlights in regards to the historical financials. As you can see, that 2014 to 2015 revenue growth increases a little bit over 40%. But at the same time frame, you can see that free cash flow goes negative from 500,000 to 3.4 million. And an important thing to highlight from there is because that's when PFPC for short decided to acquire 2 firms. And then from 2015 to 2017, you can see that revenue growth is still positive, but slightly decreasing. And you can see that free cash flow as well is starting to steer towards positive figures because you can see the benefits of the asset acquirement as well as them paying off some of their debt that they used to acquire the assets. Some of our profitability assumptions. So Gene, who is the CEO of PFCP, provided us with some revenue forecasts, and the valuation that we incorporated really reinforces the future projected performance of the company. And then PFPC will also acquire 2 additional firms in the near term to contribute to the anticipated growth as mentioned. The way that PFCP has structured their acquisition targets are based off several criteria, but the 3 main ones are they typically target similar pest control services, but that are family owned and family operated, of an older demographic, anywhere between people in the age of 50 to 60 that are ready to retire, and the main criteria, which is that they have a strong customer base for them to be able to acquire. And then just lastly, that tax rate is actually for federal tax for post-2018 alterations. So instead of 34%, we decided to go with a 21% federal tax rate.
As we were getting into our analysis, we wanted to make sure we had as good of a perspective on the company, the risks the companies face. The first one that was reiterated multiple times to us was labor. As Nate described the crawl space remediation, the nature of this work, is really gross. Crawling into really small spaces, climate is a big factor. So getting and keeping good talent is a huge risk factor for PFPC. Another risk, a little bit less so, is customer acquisition. This is up here because for PFPC, customer acquisition is really, really expensive. However, once they make that acquisition, the relationships that they maintain with their customers, as well as the value that they offer, organic products and the patents that they have on that, is something that the customers love. So their customer retention is really good. We'll talk about that in a second. Finally, regulatory risks, of course, are worth keeping tabs on. Fortunately, at the moment, pending regulatory changes would likely work in PFPC's favor. This includes, for example, Maryland is placing a ban on a common chemical that's used by their competitors, which gives them an advantage because they have a product that would be exempt from that ban. It's organic, and I'll spare you the technicalities because I really don't understand it myself. As well as a chemical that comes from China, similar sort of story, only in this case, there's expectations that China is going to cease production of that chemical. That being said, there were some regulatory changes that did have a negative impact. For example, there was a change in which licensing went from being something a firm held to something individual technicians held. So in the event that a company is faced with losing their license, prior to the change, if the company lost the license, the company was done, right? Or at least within a given jurisdiction. The way that the change that's been implemented, the way it works now, is each individual technician is licensed. So a licensed technician screws up and loses their license, the company as a whole continues to operate. The technician, however, is no longer able to operate. The problem with that is technicians found out that they could sort of go rogue, to put it in layman's terms. A technician that's doing $2,300 worth of work and is only getting paid $195 realizes that they could probably do some wheeling and dealing on the side to keep a bunch of that revenue in their pocket. Long story short, the consequence of this is the market becomes saturated with competitors, licensed technicians that can go and do this kind of work. Moving on to company strengths.
So PFPC holds patents on their products, which is one of the main drivers for an increased profit margin. For just about every single bartender or barkeeper, especially those in the South and on the East Coast, they run into the problem of black-eyed flies, and this represents an ongoing issue. With PFPC's patented products, they're able to help mitigate the risk of such pests and using an organically friendly way. And the cost of goods sold for this type of service is very low, yet because of the organic nature of the chemical compound, PFPC is able to charge a higher premium for the price of their service, making this one of the highest profit margin services that there will always be a need for. And because PFPC is a pest control service, even if a recession were to hit, people are still going to do whatever they can to get cockroaches or termites out and away from their homes. Homeowners are willing to pay just about anything to ensure that they're able to preserve the value of their most valuable asset, which is their home. And that's seen as when Mateo introduced the historical financials. PFPC has had strong sales, which is largely driven by the continual relationships that they've built with their customers and from the perpetual need to alleviate the problem of pests. And now Dorothy is going to lead us through the projected financials.
Yes. So as we incorporate our historical financials, profitability assumptions, company risk, and company strengths, now we arrive at our projected financials. Here we show you three figures: revenue, EBIT, and free cash flow. Revenue, as Mattel mentioned, the revenue forecast is provided by the CEO, Jing Wright, and we believe that those, after following up with the CEO, asking some questions about the company, we believe that the revenue forecasts are accurate. And EBIT takes into consideration the revenue and the expense forecast. The expense forecast ratios we use is we take expense as a proportion of the revenue over the past operating business years, and we use that consistently for our future expense forecast, and that gives us our EBIT. And finally, free cash flow. As for free cash flow, our free fixed asset and net working capital assumptions mirror the growth of the revenue, but we do adjust it with the capital efficiency adjust rate, so it brings it down by 2%. And after taking that into consideration, our free cash flow is projected as follows. And now we want to move to Harry.
So the next bit to talk about is how we calculated our discount rate. We used Duff and Phelps. I've spent the last week struggling to pronounce that. Sorry. Cost of capital calculator, and we went off of inputs that we knew, and any inputs that we didn't know we avoided. So we went through 3 builds, and our average cost of equity came out to 15.32%. This is much lower than not much lower, this is lower than the 18% given to us on the financial projections, but we've learned that that was likely a number that would appeal to the current ownership scenario. So this metric is based on industry performance. The SIC code is 7.3, that's business services. The risk premium for that industry, 7.07, historically with a beta of 1.05. And the risk-free rate we went with was a spot rate. The difference between the spot rate and a normalized rate offered by Duff & Phelps was 0.45%. So we felt comfortable going with the spot rate. So, and then our discount rate, ultimately 15.32.
So for our valuation, we used 3 strong valuation models to determine the value of planet-friendly pest control. Looking at our assumptions, we're using a discount rate, or R, of 15.32% that Harry just walked us through using the Duff & Phelps cost of capital calculator, looking at the particular industry. We're assuming a 3% long-term growth of the company and an ROIC of 33% based on the NOPLAT and invested capital projections in our model. The FMN model uses an EV/EBITDA multiple of 6.76, which was calculated by taking a look at 9 of the company's closest private comparables based on demographic, date of transaction, and NAICS/SIC codes, which gave us a current average multiple across the industry and region of 6.76. The FCF valuation uses the cash flow projections provided by Gene and his company, which were derived from forecasting a growth among the 5 different revenue streams of the company for the next 5 years. The KVD valuation uses the same free cash flow projections, but differs slightly due to the NOPLAT estimate in the year 2023. And the FMN model uses the EV/EBITDA multiple. That's the 6.76. And based on our 3 valuations, weighting them all equal, we came up with a weighted valuation for the company at $50.5 million. Do you have any questions?
even earlier than that, okay? And in the meantime, I expect you guys to be accessing me more readily than you did as you were working on these things on your own, because you're doing some prep and your other mentors as well. Anything else you want to add into this at the moment, Jeff?
You know, the one comment I'll say is I've watched your presentations the last few weeks, and this is coming from my personal background. I said this in our very first meeting. My preference is to look at the cash flows. You guys are pretty quick to accept projections. I would strongly encourage you to stop that. Challenge the projections, make them your own, and have a reason why they're on. So they've given us projections in okay. You can use them if you want them, and we might look at them and decide we should use them.
And we have a beautiful scenario here. We have projections that are being made 5 years ago. Let's look at how some casual men's clothiers and merchandise or manufacturers have progressed. You've got a dozen of them probably that are publicly held. Just look at their annual reports. And you can then say, well, you guys are projecting this, but we think you're wrong, and you have the beauty and value of not having to guess.
I do that in court all the time.
I'm sure that's true.
That's exactly what I do, because you talk about value in companies years in the past. The longest back I've gone was I had value a casino in 1991. And I was doing that in 2016, 2015. And so, yeah, you're absolutely, I actually do that. And I say, well, Your Honor, look, I can see what the company's actually done. I can see what the industry's done. That's why I believe my projections are reasonable. Now, that may not fly here. There's debate in evaluations as to whether that's a reasonable approach to, and even in the courts, that's not reasonable. That there's some debate. But I certainly look at it.
Well, and my guess, and it's only that, okay, and next year, maybe I won't have to guess on this, all right? But my guess is, if we come up with something that we can credibly defend, then there'll be more respect for your creativity than fault being assigned to you for not having lived within somebody's expectation of a rule that wasn't written down. That's my guess. Okay? You're differentiating yourselves from 23 other teams of people that are bright at colleges across the country. You just got to do a good job. Get creative. That's why I think one of you on each team simply needs to be writing the narrative. A very creative narrative. And a scripted narrative, as it turns out, perhaps. Okay? It's not going to be just a one-shot deal like we had here with the camera. In fact, I'm not even sure we're going to put faces on the camera. It may be Khan Academy-ish something else going on, right? Yeah.
For video, are we going to still record the video here, or do they conference with us?
It's going to be completely dependent upon how you decide your medium should look. If it is not a video with people, then we'll actually try to use a better room than either of these where we have some decent production, right? But if we're not doing a video, if we're doing some Camtasia sort of captured with good graphics, etc. thing, then it's voice recording and everything else digital. Yeah.
Just as we work through, I challenge everyone to just constantly be questioning yourself, some of the assumptions you make and the things that you decide to do, and also question other teammates, because the more we do that as we are building out our evaluations, the more we'll be ready for questions that the judges may have, or other people, because there are always going to be questions, and the more we hear them within ourselves, like I said, the more prepared we're going to be when it comes crunch time.
And this, by the way, is why in each of our 2 exposures here, I've asked the students of the other team to ask the first questions. Now, you've been reticent to do so. But you guys have all been in venues, in classes, and in the CFA preparations, where I've been one of the people responsible to ask the questions. Am I fairly aggressive in the questions I ask? I get right down to the point and put you on the spot? Absolutely. And I'm a nice guy by comparison. Okay. All right. We got some work to do to get it done.